ladies and gentlemen, we have joining me right now is UFC announcer / play-by-play master and the host of Fitz Nation podcast, Brendan Fitzgerald. Thank you so much for coming on, man. Again, it's been a wild couple of weeks in the UFC. Just catch up on, what you've been up to and what your life has been like. Tell us what's been going on.
Oh, man, just a lot of working in Las Vegas, right? These Apex cards keep coming fast and furious. It was great to see the crowd and to have the show get back on the road. I wasn't in Jacksonville, but the work never stops. So we turned the page and, the Las Vegas is going to stay busy and we'll get out there for the pay-per-views. But, man, just keep grinding away and having fun.
Yeah, definitely. Today, so what I want to do is with you is recap 261 and then kind of preview a little bit of 262 coming up. But before that, some big news, with Diego Sanchez, and the video of him. I don't know why he released that video, but because it doesn't make anybody look good, especially didn't made him look good or his team and his coach. But I just wanted to get your overall thoughts before we get into recapping 261 and that situation, because it was kind of like a private room, a private area, and I didn't think that was right.
Yeah, I don't think it's Diego doing it, to be honest. I think it's Josh Fabia doing it, and he's getting his name out there. And some people, they don't care how they get their name out there. You know what I mean? And to him, does he look bad in his own eyes? Probably not. He probably is thinking that he looks good in his own eyes, and he's probably trying to take down the UFC or whatever. But I don't know, man. It's a weird situation. I was in that room on Fight Island, and it was awkward. It seemed just like really out of place. It almost seemed like he was asking for us to defend him when people like you, and I'm not saying like you did anything wrong, but I'm just saying people on YouTube, MMA media in general, if they took shots at him, he thought it was on our broadcast team to like defend him. You know what I mean? And to like talk about how good he is and that everybody else is wrong. That's not what we do, dude. We kind of call it like we see it. We talk about training and coaches if it's relevant to the story. And, for Diego Sanchez, he's a legend of the sport. He's in the UFC Hall of Fame for some of his great moments. But, like he's had some he's even had some wins recently. You know what I mean? It's not like he hasn't won in 6 years. Like he's had some wins, but not a great way for him to go out. For all the good moments that he left the UFC fans over the years, from his time on The Ultimate Fighter all the way till, recently, to have this be the end of it, it's just kind of weird. But what can you say, man? They're a different crew. Like I feel like I'm a bit of a weird guy. So, you know what I mean? Like pointing and laughing at somebody is not good for anybody, no matter what age. We always say anti-bullying, and then we're going to sit here and bully this guy. Now, is he different? Yeah, he's a little different. Is what he did going to get him any favors? No, it's not. But that's for him to figure out. You know what I mean? So on we go, and the UFC doesn't slow down for anybody.
Exactly. That's the key point. It keeps going, and I just wanted to get your quick thoughts on that, and let's move on to 261. Probably one of the greatest pay-per-views of all time. We always say that, right? We always say, "Oh, this is the greatest fight of all time."
Not always. Not always.
But where would you rank it?
Well, like recency bias is a real thing. Recency bias is a real thing. But, the last time there were 3 title fights on a pay-per-view, if I remember correctly, it was Kamaru and Colby Covington. And then before that was Amanda Nunes and Jermaine Durandamy. Before that was Volkanovski and Holloway 1. Were we coming out of that saying that's the best pay-per-view of all time? No, we weren't. We were saying it was a great main event, and we were saying a pay-per-view happened in Las Vegas. But truly with the fights, right, we had 3 title fights and 3 finishes. That doesn't happen often. The fear is when you put 3 title fights on a pay-per-view, that's 3 possible 5-round fights. On the East Coast of the United States, the media markets that are New York and Philadelphia and those big media markets and stuff, that's 1:30 in the morning possibly. Like I lived on the East Coast when DC fought John Jones in Anaheim in 2017. I was up until 1:15 in the morning, because the fights just went so long, and that fight didn't even go the distance. So, to have 3 title fights with all that build up, number one, because of the matchups. Number 2, because of the circumstance of the crowd being involved for the first time in over a year. And then to have those finishes happen like that, head kick knockout, Shevchenko finish, and then, Masvidal getting finished, and Usman just adding to his impressive legacy. Like, No, I said at the beginning of the night, I tweeted out, I said, tonight has the potential to be remembered like the Ultimate Fighter 1, like just one of those landmark events. Like you remember where you were when you were watching it because of what it did for the sport, and in the sport and sports in general. And, the Ultimate Fighter 1 was one of those landmark moments, obviously, because of what it did for mixed martial arts in the UFC. And I think having a full packed arena with the sports world watching and taking center stage and then have that be what you got for your money on the pay-per-view. Yeah, man, people are going to remember that night for a long time.
Yeah, and it had a little bit of everything. And what shined to me most about this night was that the narrative going into these fights, especially the title fights, with Andrade saying that she's gonna take down Shevchenko and beat her up and put her in places where she's not normally at, but it was the
Yeah.
opposite, and she won. Basically, Shevchenko won the way that Andrade said she was going to win, and also Kamaru too. Jorge
Mm-hmm.
said he's gonna stand up and knock out Kamaru, and what happened? Kamaru went in there and knocked out Jorge. It's just wild, right? And
Mm-hmm.
let's just go into the first fight, the first title fight, which is Valentina Shevchenko. Like, where would you rate her now? Is she just too dominant? Because Andrade was the biggest threat, and she went in there, and I don't even think she won the whole round, every single minute, every
You're
single
right.
second, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, 125 is tricky, man, because after Shevchenko, there's a heck of a lot of tightly contested matchups and contenders. You know what I mean? Like Lauren Murphy's fighting Joanne Calderwood. Who wins that fight? I mean, that's a tough fight to call, and anybody could come out of that. But whoever comes out of that's going to be a plus 600, 700 underdog against Valentina Shevchenko. There's just nobody right now in that weight class that can hold a candle to what she's doing. And I think it's one of those situations where Tiger Woods came up in the late 90s and just once he got his footing, he was just dominant. And what did he do? He made golf so popular and he was so dominant, it was so fun to watch that he created a generation of really, really good golfers that all of a sudden he had a hard time beating. Like he was getting older and then they came up and it was hard for him to dominate like he did because all of these guys that watched him when they were kids came of age. And for Valentina, she's inspiring a lot of young women, I think. You know what I mean? Like with what she's doing and the level of greatness she has, I think it's going to take a cycle of this sport to see like, wow, these people I was 15 and I saw Valentina Shevchenko and I wanted to be the next her. Pretty soon that girl's going to be 25, and Valentina might be 38 and, who knows if she's still fighting at that point, right? It's like, that's the interesting crossroads, but I don't know. There's nobody on the horizon I can think of right now where it's just like I feel pretty good, against Valentina, even at 135, other than Nunes, And so Valentina Nunes is going to happen at some point, you would think. But I don't know, man. I mean, we like to see greatness too. Everybody wants sometimes you're waiting for the big dog to get knocked off and then they get knocked off and you're just like, oh, well, now it kind of murkies the waters a little bit and people kind of take a back step. Look what happens after Ronda Rousey lost. Ronda was this undefeated force. Nobody could beat her, worldwide superstar running through the competition. And since then it was just like, okay, we've had some stars at 135 a little bit, but nobody like Ronda, So with Valentina, I think we got to enjoy the greatness while we have it.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like she's like on a different frequency right now, and
Mm-hmm.
like you said, we have to see the prospects coming up because there are some really good
Yeah, I
prospects.
mean, like Macy Barber hasn't had a good run of late, but she's still like what 21 or
Hmm.
something. And these other who else? Miranda Maverick,
Yeah,
strong, you know what I mean? Like these strong women that are coming up in their early 20s, And the thing is, are they going to and they're still improving. You would think they're improving more than Valentina is improving at this point. Like they have a lot more to go. Their ceiling's a bit higher in terms of where their game can get better. So you just wonder, like, in 5 years, like is Valentina, whatever she is, 30, I think she's like 31 right now or something like that. Is she 36, still fighting and still what many would consider at the top of her game? And now you have a game kind of fully primed and ready to go, 26, 27-year-old person that was once a prospect that's ready to take them on. I mean, time will tell.
yeah, I can't wait until that happens. But Shevchenko, one thing I like about her, she's not chasing
That's
after
also
the
saying a
super.
lot. That's Shevchenko winning another like 10 title fights in a
Yeah,
row if we're talking 5, 6 years down the road. So
yeah,
like we'll see. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like I don't think we can put the cart before the horse too much in this sport.
No, we
You get burned
can't.
if you do
We
that.
can't. But we could always, we could always anticipate, right? And also
Yeah.
she's not chasing after super fights. She's just like, I'll fight whoever you put in front of me. If you want me to
Hmm.
defend the title, I'll defend the title. And I like it. I like that she has that attitude, and she's that Muay Thai mentality, right? Where they want to fight often and they want to fight
Hmm.
consecutively, and I like this idea. Where does Jessica Andrade go though? It's like she does she go
It's a
back
good
down to
question.
115?
It's a good question. I mean, if she wants to try to make that weight at 115, like she beat Rose and then Rose beat her. I mean, there's a trilogy right there staring it in the face. She wants to go down and make that weight. And also in the rematch, it's not like Rose wiped her out. That was a split decision. Plenty of people thought Andrade did enough to win that fight. You could argue that Andrade should have been fighting Zhang Weili in a rematch. And I don't think we saw Andrade's best performance against Zhang Weili, in China on the road, first title defense, and just got a little too overzealous and got caught in the pocket. So, if you're asking me, what should Andrade do? Like, I think her best shot at a title is obviously to go back down to 115 and be in that mix, because we know that she can be in that mix. And that's, for my money, the most fun division on the women's side of things right now. She's not going up to 135 to fight Nunes where she did before. And she just lost to the champion who dominated her over the course of 2 rounds. So, I don't know. It's up to her, but she certainly fits right back in the top 3 at 115.
Yeah, and that leads perfect into the co-main event. Rose Namajunas goes out there, a minute 18, lands like the perfect kick between the hands.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost effortless. I don't, it didn't even look like it had any force to it. And Zhang Weili, she dropped like a stack of bricks, and she did
Yeah.
pop back up, but once she got hit with a couple punches, it was over. She was protesting it. Do you think that was valid?
No, I think she didn't really know what was happening. We see that all the time with fighters. Like Kevin Lee tapped in Brasilia, and then he was protesting. And it's just like, dude, you tapped. You know what I mean? And then I think Zhang Weili saw the replay, and she was more upset that it happened after the fact. But in the immediate aftermath, you don't know what happened. I can only imagine what it's like to get kicked in the head, flash knockout. Where am I? What happened? Crowd's going nuts. You're just trying to chase down Rose, right? So, not the first time, not the last time we've seen that reaction. Man, it looked like a video game, didn't it? Like you said, effortless. It was just like hit the button, in more ways than one, and just like down she went. It was just like, was that real life? It seemed like it was a glitch in the system with how quick it happened. But man, Rose, what can you say, man? She gives these reactions, these moments that just they're going to live. You know what I mean? If she doesn't do anything else for the rest of her career, she has 2 of the biggest knockouts in UFC history, certainly in women's history. And she's a very unique personality to boot. And she's really good at the piano. And I've been playing the piano since last year. So I'm jealous of that. Like, I need some piano lessons from Rose. But yeah, man, what a star. What a star. What a refreshing personality for our sport. It's great to see. And I think Zhang Weili is not done too, because she's been nothing but a pleasure in terms of her moments at press conferences and her English skills coming along and being kind of this potential worldwide superstar. Her story is far from over too.
Especially with the UFC and their focus on growing that talent in China. I think and it's her first loss in like 20
Yeah,
something fights. So
21 fight win
yeah,
streak. You know,
so
you know, you're
it,
allowed. You're
yeah, you're
allowed in this
allowed to
sport.
have a
You're allowed in
setback
this
once in a
sport.
while,
Yeah.
and I think she can come back and fight any of the top contenders. I don't believe that she should get a rematch because this was just so easy for Rose. If it was like a war, I could understand it somewhat, but Rose went in there with a perfect game plan and executed it. Now, what's the next step for
Well,
Rose? A lot of people are talking about the winner of Esparza versus Yan Jianan. Do you think that could be the next contender?
yeah, I don't know. I was just gonna say, like, if I don't know, it's almost like if it happens so quick, you could build Zhang Weili into a rematch. I don't know if she's gonna get it right away. I don't know if that's the right thing to do, but if you do get caught, it's not like you got dominated, right? Like Zhang Weili could be like, oh, it was a head kick, timed perfectly, whatever. Like, that's not who I am. I'm better than that. Joanna Jędrzejczyk got an immediate rematch after first round knockout against Rose. She got dropped twice in that first round and got ended. Now, I know she had the belt for longer than Zhang Weili, defended it, 6 times or whatever it was. So certainly, like, you build up equity with how long you hold the belt. Like, if Usman loses, he'll get an immediate rematch on whoever beats him. If Usman were to lose against pick the up and comer who's trying to take his spot. But for Zhang Weili, I understand like she defended the belt one time in a split decision where people thought Joanna might have gotten it. But I think you could still build a rematch there. If not, do you tough to put Joanna 0-2 right against Rose again. Esparza and Yan Xiaonan, yeah, that's possible. Certainly possible. Andrade's trilogy makes a lot of sense. I think there's several options, and I think it'll be up to Rose on when she wants to fight again. She's proven like she doesn't have to rush back in there. So I think she's going to soak this one up, enjoy it a little bit, and then they'll see what makes sense promotionally. But I don't know what it is. There's several options, though, clearly.
Definitely. Now, in the headliner, you got Usman. He went in there, and a lot of people expected him to go in there and win this fight. That's what he did, and he did it better than he did in the first fight. Now, he's talking about he wants to fight Michael Chiesa in June. I was shocked by this. I was surprised.
Chiesa like 6? I saw that today too. Is he like 6 or 7 right now?
Yeah, he is.
What's his ranking?
He is like 6, 7, around that.
Yeah, curious. I think what I heard was that he asked who has the longest win streak at welterweight. And Chiesa's what, like 4 or 5 or something like that? Chiesa hasn't lost since coming up to 170. I thought Chiesa was one fight away from being in the top 5. And then once you're in the top 5, to me, especially with a champion like Usman, you're fair game. You know what I mean? Like obviously the champion should fight 1 or 2, maybe 3, depending on the circumstance. But if he's already beaten 1, 2, 3, and 4, or, if he's already beaten 1, 2, and 3, like we saw that with Khabib, you know what I mean? Like, bring him on. I took care of this guy, bring him on. I'll take on anybody. And if they want different names and stuff like that, Adesanya, same thing. Look at Adesanya. Like, he's not rushing against, or, Whitaker would have gotten the shot. It would have been a quick turnaround, but it's just like, okay, Vittori's 3 or 4, whatever he is. Like, cool, I haven't beaten him yet, So curious that kind of is something he asked for. We'll see how much pull he has, how much pull as a champion he has. I don't know if they're going to put a guy in a title fight outside the top 5. And I like Chiesa a lot. Like, I'm friends with him now, because he works on our broadcast team a little bit. Chiesa is a great guy, and I hope that one day he does get that title shot, because he's been in the game a long time, and he's a great fighter, and he's a great personality for the sport. But it's tough to sell that on a pay-per-view headliner against a dominant champion to put number 6, just optically. But stranger things have happened. I think Colby rematch makes a lot of sense, considering that Colby pushed him more than anybody else has. And if that goes to the judges' scorecards after another 2 minutes of action, Colby very well could have gotten the decision, So it's a rematch with a lot of heat. There's a lot of build-up. There's a lot of hate on it. And I think we all would like to watch that one unfold again to see what's what.
I just like watching Usman
Leon
fight.
Edwards, too. Leon Edwards is an impressive win against Nate Diaz away. Nate Diaz shuts down Leon Edwards. I mean, you got guys in the conversation, And if Usman... Sometimes, if Usman wants to make the most money and Diaz beats Edwards in a couple of weeks, I think that's moving the needle more than any other fight.
Yeah, let's jump into that. UFC 262 coming up on May 15th. The co-main event, Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz. The fight that I believe no one expected that they were going to put together. And it's going to be the first ever 5-round co-main event in UFC history. Just give me your thoughts on this being a 5-round fight, and who goes in there with the advantages of a 25-minute fight. Is it Edwards? Because I don't think we've seen him, we haven't seen him like falter in a 5-round fight, and everybody talks about Nate Diaz's cardio. So what do you think?
I don't know if that's a deciding factor for me. If it's just like, oh, I would have liked this guy, but it's 5 rounds, so I'm leaning the other way. If you ask what's Nate Diaz's strong suit, you'd say, well, it's probably the fact that we want to see those last 2 rounds against Masvidal, because it looked like Diaz was really starting to come on. At the end of the third, it was like, we got a big story on our hands in rounds 4 and 5 because Diaz is looking pretty fresh right now, and then ultimately a cut stops it. And then at the same time with Leon Edwards, like, guy's an absolute specimen. Like, he's just ripped. Cardio's never been an issue. He was in 5 rounds against RDA and just destroyed him. Over the course of 5 rounds, he was just dominant, and he looked really, really good over the first round against Bilal Muhammad. Like, looks like it was, I'm not counting Bilal out of it, but I'm just saying, like, it was a good opening round. So, that's not a deciding factor for me. I think it's a fun fight. I mean, Edwards, they wanted to put a big fight, on a pay-per-view for a co-main event. And in these times of COVID and pandemic and all that stuff, you need to have a backup plan. And let's say worst comes to worst, Chandler and Oliveira can't go for whatever reason. Nate Diaz can headline a pay-per-view. I don't care what it's for. He's done things that nobody else has done. He's headlined against McGregor, non-title fight pay-per-view, one of the biggest of all time. It was so good they had to do it again. Then he said Masvidal had a good last fight. We're the two baddest, and then they created a belt and a new main event for Nate Diaz. So, I think it's a little bit of that, because obviously if it's a 3-round co-main event, you don't want to spring it on him last minute if you need to bump that to the main event. I don't know that's why they did that. I'm just saying there's reasons to do something like that. But man, that's a fun fight, and I don't think anybody complains after 3 rounds of like, oh, we got to watch 2 more rounds of Nate Diaz, against a guy like Leon Edwards who's on the streak that he's on. It's going to be a heck of a lot of fun.
Yeah, Edwards, he's on, like you said, an incredible run.
I think it's 8.
Yeah, 8. It'll be 9. That's like, of course, you got to throw him in there with Usman. There's no denying him, but you never know with the titles right now, right? Because Usman, he has all the marbles. You know what I mean? It seems like he's calling the shots, right?
Well, so if Edwards wins, I think it'd be up to Usman. Does he give it to Colby? Does he give it to Edwards? I honestly think that they would go to Usman, and he's done enough where they could be like, these 2 guys deserve it. Who would you get? And it'd be curious to see, because I think a fight with Colby is a little higher profile based on the rematch, based on the personalities that are involved, but you can't fault Leon Edwards in terms of what he's done. And both of those guys might just wait, just depends. Like if Leon gets a big win and the rematch for Usman and Covington is scheduled, Edwards might just be like, I'll wait. I'll get the winner of that one. And the problem is if Colby wins, then you got to wait for a trilogy. And then, you're putting yourself on the back seat in that case. It's prickly, man. When you get to the top of the division, it's, that's some of the fighters that are like, in that 15-10 or just outside the rankings, like they're just chasing to get to the top of the rankings. And sometimes it's like, well, man, when you get to the top, then there's a lot of sitting and waiting around sometimes, depending on what makes sense, what you want, what you're willing to risk. It's it's the fight game. It's a lot of fun to talk about all the time, but if you're in it, there can be some tricky questions to navigate.
Yeah, it's a business moves, man. Once you get up there, it's all business moves, and
there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
It could turn out great. It couldn't. It could be bad. Like it's just they got to do it by feel. A lot of it is breaks and timing and all that sort of stuff. So we'll see.
Definitely. Now in the main event of 262, you got Charles Oliveira do Bronx against Michael Chandler. I like this fight. I like this matchup. I like that Oliveira is getting the shot, because a lot of people thought he wasn't going to get it. And what is the most interesting narrative heading into this fight for you, Brendan?
Yeah, I think I don't know a heck of a lot about Michael Chandler, right? He's done his work elsewhere, over more than a decade, and been a champion elsewhere. But I think it's pretty interesting. Like, you can't argue with the result against Dan Hooker, and you can't argue with what he did on the mic with the post-fight, right? The post-fight speech. I mean, so for him to, in his second UFC appearance, find himself in a spot like this for such a coveted belt, there's a UFC championship, and then there's the lightweight belt right now with the big stars that are at the top of that division. Chandler wins, he's setting himself up for how many more big fights, right? He beat Hooker. If he wins this one, he's got Gaethje breathing down his neck, the Poirier, or McGregor, right? That is paid. That's like, you cannot go wrong with any of those options. And Charles Oliveira, same thing, right? He's been in the fight game a long time. He's got the submission record. I've called plenty of Charles Oliveira fights. Like, he is among the most fun fighter to call. Knockouts, submissions, setting records. Who knows when Brazil gets back to the point where they can host an event. But if he's the title holder and the Brazilian crowd is down in a packed house for a UFC pay-per-view with their guy holding the belt and defending it against McGregor, who would go into the Lion's Den against that guy. I mean, there are some major big fight possibilities if either of these guys wins. And that's to say nothing about the fact that this is a major fight in its own right. So I think what's at stake for each guy is just so big because of how long they've been great and what a crowning achievement it would be. And then what it sets them up for. Man, can't be overstated.
Yeah, the future is bright for whoever wins this fight. Even if you have a setback, even with Chandler, if he loses, he still can climb back up and fight for the title again.
If any of the guys, I mean, you know, if Chandler loses, you still want to see him against Gaethje. You still want to see him against Poirier. You still want to see him against McGregor, depending on what happens in their next fight in the top 5 of that division. Still want to see him against like all the matchups for Chandler are fresh. Everything but Dan Hooker is a fresh matchup for Michael Chandler, and a really, really fun one, you know, and a big fight, a big kind of pay-per-view fight, co-main event if it's not for a belt, you know, main event on any big fight night, whatever. So love that. You know, love that. And then for Charles Oliveira, you know, those Brazilian fans are louder than anywhere else on the planet. And for a guy that's been doing it as long as he has, you know, win or lose, I mean, he's going to get a big name on the way out, you know, because he's earned his spot like in that top 2, 3, 4, you know, and that's where the big names are. So that'd be a lot of fun.
All right, man. Thank you, man, for coming on and talking some UFC pay-per-views. And where can we see you, man, in the lead up to this pay-per-view? You got a couple shows going down, right?
I do. So I don't know when this will come out, but 5/1, I'm on the call. So that would be tomorrow night, my time.
Yes, sir.
And then we'll do our gambling show again this week before the 5/8 card, which obviously got kind of jumbled up here. And we'll see what happens with that. And then I'll do another gambling show. We'll do our gambling show for all the picks for the pay-per-view. And then, of course, my podcast, Fitz Nation. I just had Bisping on my podcast. Okay. So, yeah, you can find that on YouTube. You can find that anywhere you listen to podcasts, long-form interviews with some of the people that make the fight game go. It's been a heck of a lot of fun. And, you know, JHK, find me with you.
Definitely, man.
Take a move in the ring. You can hit me with the words you fling.